Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Every touch is a step forward. By Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. By Tandem Diabetes Care, makers of the t:slim X2 insulin pump. And by Real Good Foods. Real food you feel good about eating.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, something new. Advice from two diabetes parents you know and trust. Me and my friend, author Moira McCarthy. We're answering your questions about kids at Type 1, including one about what to do for a newly diagnosed child who just want to start announcing they have diabetes.
Small steps, have the closest friends over a week after you get home from the hospital and have a little pizza party. And then they can see, you can still eat pizza, but you have to do this, and just kind of explain it to the best friends. And then your child has sort of a footing into people knowing. Don't send them to school and make them do an assembly for the whole school.
Oh my gosh. Moira is the award-winning and very well-known author of many diabetes books and articles, including Raising Teens with Diabetes, and I'm so excited to partner up with her this way. In our community connection, another diabetes mom talks about finding the do-it-yourself community and setting up Loop when her daughter was diagnosed in 2015. I'll talk to Katie DiSimone, who now works for Tidepool on their Loop project. Plus, tell me something good. Good news from our community, straight from you. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of Diabetes Connections. I'm your host, Stacey Sims. Glad to have you along. How you doing with those New Year's resolutions? Mine this year are really just to give you more good stuff, and that includes what we're doing this week, trying something new. I've specifically held back from talking too much about how we do things in our personal life with Type 1 or offering advice, but I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm thrilled that Moira McCarthy agreed to do this with me. If you are new to the show, my son was diagnosed just before he turned 2 back in 2006. So yeah, we're talking 12 years ago. He just turned 14. And Moira's daughter, as you'll hear, was diagnosed at age 6. She is now in her late 20s. So between us, we have quite a lot of experience. Moira is definitely the teen expert, but we both found we had a lot to say. We got a lot of new listeners thanks to the Titan Games and the episode with Chris Rudin. So if you're in that group, please make sure to subscribe wherever you are listening. We are available on every podcast app and pretty much wherever you get audio these days. I know a lot of people listen through social media or right from the website. And speaking of social media, please make sure and join our Facebook group. It is Diabetes Connections, the group, or sign up for the newsletter to stay in touch. And all of that information is in the show notes every week, as are links to just about everything we talk about. A lot going on this week. Let's get to it. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. When Benny was very little and in the bathtub or at the pool, I always noticed his fingertips. You know what I mean? They were poked so much they were full of little pinprick holes that you could really see when they got wet. Well, as I said, he's 14, so I don't see his hands close up very much anymore. But the other day, just after he washed his hands, I noticed that his fingertips look normal. We've been using the Dexcom for 5 years now, and with every new iteration, we've done fewer and fewer finger sticks. The latest generation, the Dexcom G6, eliminates finger sticks for calibration and diabetes treatment decisions. Just thinking about doing 10 finger sticks a day in the past makes me so glad that Dexcom has helped us come so far. It's an incredible tool. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. Learn more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, you have heard the name Moira McCarthy, in addition to being a friend of mine, and I feel very lucky to be able to say that, frankly. Moira is really just an incredible speaker when it comes to raising a child with diabetes, and that's because she wrote the book. She wrote 2, The Everything Parent's Guide to Raising Children with Diabetes, and Raising Teens with Diabetes, A Parent Survival Guide. I'm going to link up a lot on Moira in the show notes, including the interviews that she's done with me in the past. She has 2 daughters. Her younger daughter, Lauren, was diagnosed with type 1 at the age of 6. 21 years later now, Lauren is a successful adult living independently. You'll hear more about her when I bring Moira on in just a moment. But I also want to let you know that in addition to everything Moira does with diabetes, including being an incredible advocate with JDRF, she's also really successful outside of diabetes land, if I can say it that way. She has this incredible career as a journalist, a sports journalist, a travel writer, writing for the Boston Herald these days. When you watch her on Facebook, she's always skiing someplace. Just a really terrific person who can speak to living a fulfilled life and not getting lost in diabetes. And that's why I found her years and years ago when I needed somebody to tell me that it was okay to go back to work. It was okay to pursue my dreams. And Moira really helped me. And when I got to meet her and become friends with her, it was really good for me. And I want to bring that to you. I do have to say, this is a little bit out of my comfort zone. The podcast has always been a place where I thought we'd talk about news and other people's stories. But over the years, as you listen, you've probably noticed that more and more of our personal story has bled into the show. And certainly this segment is a departure. I think it's a good one. Let me know what you think. By the way, we took these questions off of Facebook, and after the interview, I will let you know how you can write us with what you'd like to hear about next. Here is my conversation with Moira. Hello, Moira. How are you?
Oh, it's always so good to talk to you, Stacey. I'm good. How are you?
I'm so great. I haven't seen you in just a couple of weeks, but it really hasn't been that long.
I know. We really should have a world where we can just transport ourselves to our favorite diabetes moms' kitchens anytime we feel like it. But I guess that's kind of what we're doing with your listeners right now, right?
Yeah, I love this. I'm very excited to be doing this. So let's start before we jump into the questions here. How's everything going? How's Lauren doing?
She's doing great. I recently had a blog post up, a guest blog post from her on she had hit a little burnout, and I'm really impressed with how she has addressed it as an adult, and she has quickly turned that corner and is working her way back, and her career is great, and she just got to visit for 10 days and hold her niece. So everything's good. And how is crazy Mr. Benny?
Oh my gosh. He's such a nut job. He's doing well. He's, it depends on what you're asking.
I hear you.
Diabetes is fine. He's, 8th grade is bananas. And, no, he really is. He's doing well. I had shared on the show not too long ago that, this fall we had switched over to Untethered and we have Basal IQ, and he's doing all this stuff himself now with me kind of saying, do you need any help, honey? I'm here. And him saying, whatever, Mom, go away.
And he's at the Peter Brady "It's Time to Change" song phase of his life. God. So all kinds of fun in the Stacey Sims household.
That's hysterical. I should do a thing where, at the end of the show where he says, this is a production of, I should make him do it in his deeper now voice.
Oh, no, you should play both.
The Diabetes Connections is a... Did I ever tell you about when I met Lauren for the first time? You weren't there.
No, I wasn't there. I know that it was at a Friends for Life outside of DC.
Yeah. So I went to, it was the one they have in the fall. It's got to be 2 or 3 years ago. And I was running up to her. And then in the middle of going up to say hi, I felt this is so weird because what am I going to say? Hey, I know your mom and I know all about you. And I've written, and of course I did. I kind of blurted that out. And she's so chill about you and, having been written about. And obviously she's shared in that, as you said, she does a guest blog for you and she's helped with the book and everything else. But I felt kind of funny, hi, I'm your mom's friend and I want to be your friend. But luckily she was really cool about it.
Well, it happens the other way around too. I meet people who are like, oh my God, you're Lauren's mom. I'm Lauren's friend. So
oh, that's nice.
It's all good. She's a good kid. If I can raise a good kid with diabetes to be a healthy, successful adult, anyone can, Stacey.
All right. Well, let's figure out how to do that.
Let's.
Now, as we jump to these questions, I think it's good to set up that obviously we are not medical professionals. The advice here is from 2 parents. My child, as I've mentioned, is in the 8th grade. He is 14. He was diagnosed at the age of 2. Lauren was diagnosed at 6, 7?
Lauren was diagnosed at 6, 21 years ago. And I always like to say that I don't have my MD or my PhD, but I do have my MOM. And so that's the degree I bring with me today.
Definitely. All right. Excellent. So the first question that we got I love this because I think I still do struggle with this a little bit. Shay wrote in and said, how do you convey to other caregivers, people like parents, coaches, teachers, grandparents, the seriousness of the disease, but also that your child can do and eat anything the other kids can do or eat? That's a good one because you don't want people to take it lightly, but at the same time, you don't want to scare everybody. How do you handle something like that?
It's such a great question. And looking back over the years, I think that it's sort of a lead by example. And I always like to say to parents, the sooner you can get your kids back to doing everything they do in life and get you back to doing everything you do in life the way you did before diabetes, the better off it is for you. But I think it's better off for other people too, because then they'll see your kid running all over the soccer field and say, gosh, I thought she was diagnosed with diabetes. And that gives you a chance to say, yes, and there's a lot of steps that go into this, but there's no reason she can't do everything. And as far as if you are raising your child to eat the same way they ate before diabetes, that being, a healthy diet of a child growing, what you say to people is, thankfully we're in the 21st century and the diet doesn't change. What changes is what we do around the diet. Does that make sense to you? What do you think?
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. I love the idea of just letting your kid do activities and lead by showing. It's funny because we also went through this as a kid grows, things change anyway. So when Benny was diagnosed, he was 23 months old. And you're taking a little kid to play dates and you're going to birthday parties. And of course, you're staying not because of diabetes, but because your kid is 2 and then your kid is 3. And around here, most of the time, the kindergarten age is the drop-off age at birthday parties or even for baseball practices and your t-ball, those kinds of things. It's like kindergarten, first grade. And I found myself, I stayed because I did not feel at that time that I was comfortable conveying that balance to caregivers. I just didn't have the words. And I don't think at 5 or 6, it was something that I felt comfortable with. So this to me was something that I didn't really run into until, let's say, age 7. Then that was for me. And what I would do is I would think to myself, what's the worst thing that's going to happen here, right? What are we really talking about? Baseball practice was a great example for me to use because he played baseball for years and years. And what I would tell the coach when I left was, look, everything's going to be fine. If he feels funny, he's going to stop and get a Gatorade. He's going to stop and get a drink. If you see him being wobbly, this is a coach that's watching 7 and 8-year-olds. And, somebody has asthma. Somebody wears glasses. Somebody, does whatever. They're watching all the players and they're watching them for skill development too. So they're not, your child might be picking daisies in the outfield, but the coach is watching them. So I say, if you see him, just ask him, are you okay? And he can always go to the dugout and check his blood sugar and drink a Gatorade or whatever. But I would also say, look, the worst thing that's going to happen is that he's going to pass out. And I know this sounds crazy if you're newly diagnosed, but this is what I did. I would say the worst thing that's going to happen is he's going to pass out. Has never done that before, but that's the worst thing. What would you do if any child on the field passed out? He said, I would call 911 and then I would call the parent. I said, perfect. You know exactly how to handle it. And that's what I did. I don't know. Is that terrible?
I also think it's important to understand, and this is really hard for parents newer to this to understand, that nothing bad is really going to happen. If you're leaving your child for an hour or two, I know thousands of families of children with diabetes, and I do not know a single one who passed out during sports or during school. And so when we learn in the beginning, we have this feeling that something dangerous is imminent. And, Lauren likes to joke, it's really hard to hurt a person with diabetes because I've tested it in every way. But in reality, I think that sometimes we can scare parents away when we try to teach them too much too soon. And so all someone really needs to know when your child is playing at their house or at a birthday party or even at a sleepover is really the bare minimum, like you described.
Right back to Moira talking about what the other parents need to know. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. And for 7 years, One Touch Vario test strips have delivered reliable results you can trust. And did you know they have the lowest copay on the most health plans and are always covered on traditional Medicare Part B? To upgrade today to the One Touch Vario Flex Meter, visit diabetes-connections.com and click on the One Touch logo. Coverage and payment may be subject to co-insurance, deductible, and patient eligibility requirements. LifeScan does not guarantee coverage or payment. Now back to Moira's advice about what to tell other parents and caregivers about diabetes.
And so I think if you come in wanting to do that full training that we got in the hospital, people are going to think, when in reality, and of course, people should talk to their medical team about this. You know, what do they really need to know while my child is over there playing? And I think that if you can boil that down and understand that everyone doesn't have to have the kind of expertise and care that you have every minute. You know, if you're leaving your child for a month, that's a different story. But to go play to kids down the road or something, there's not a lot people need to know. And I think what you said is spot on. It's really scary for parents. And all I can say is I just had this experience with a mom the other day here in Massachusetts. Her daughter was invited to a sleepover and she didn't know what to do. And I sort of trained her in the way you said, this is what I would do, blah, blah, blah. Talk to your endo. Here's my suggestion for a mini plan. And one of the things that I said is don't look at your share all night because you're not going to know everything that she's doing. And you're going to lose your mind trying to figure things out without the information. Well, funniest thing, at midnight, the daughter's share stopped working.
Of course.
And the next morning, the mother said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that happened because you actually gave me the right advice and she was fine. And next time, I'm not going to worry about it as much. And so have the courage, take the leap and let your kids do things without you having total control all the time, as is appropriate, as your medical team says. Amen. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised.
Yeah. And I should say the only reason that I would feel comfortable saying to a coach, what would you do if a kid passed out, is because I knew it was never going to happen.
Right.
I mean, and as you know, and I hope it's clear, especially if you're a longtime listener, I use humor a lot to help me. And I hope it's not off-putting as you listen.
This is why we're friends, Stacey. Yeah. But actually,
but you're so calming.
I think you saying that to the coach was really smart because that's what the world thinks out there. You know, they saw Steel Magnolias and they read something somewhere. And so that's their vision of what could happen with someone with diabetes. So by saying, look, here's the worst case scenario. It's not going to happen. But if it does, what are you going to do? And say, exactly, that's all you have to do. Is going to calm everyone else too.
And we never, it's 12 years of type 1, all sorts of different sports. I asked Benny recently, just for fun, I was like, what's the craziest thing that's happened during sports? And he said that one time during a football game, he was so low. Well, he didn't say it that way. He said one time during a football game, he said, Mom, I knew I was low. I walked off the field. I got a Gatorade. I sat down. I drank it. Then I looked at my phone where his number. He said, I saw I was low and I sat out. He said, but I never told anybody or called a timeout. He said, I just walked off the field. He said the coach came over and was like, what's going on? And then they realized and everything was fine. This was a 7th grader playing football. It wasn't, a college bowl game or anything. But I thought that was really funny that he didn't even think maybe he was low enough that it wasn't the first thought, but more likely he was just, I have to treat. So
that's exactly how it should be. And those are good lessons for life because Lauren is an adult in a very high pressure job in Washington, D.C. now. Nobody cares if her blood sugar is low or high. There's no 504s in life, unfortunately or fortunately. And so she has to just keep going. Her funniest story is she was on her way to work on the metro in D.C. and all of a sudden she felt really low. So in her head, she thought, she was standing on the metro course. She thought, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get my glucose tabs out of my briefcase. So she sat down and she dug her glucose tabs out and she looked up and realized she was sitting in someone's lap.
Oh my God.
And she was like, it made perfect sense in the moment. And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry.
That's hysterical.
But I think that letting go of your fear to let your kids understand things like Benny understood is really brave and positive parenting, in my opinion. Not the easiest thing to do, but life isn't easy when you do it right. Right?
Oh, no doubt. Hey, before we wrap this question up, just one more point on it. I also would like to say, I think it's fine, and it took me a long time to learn this. It is fine to talk about diabetes in different ways to different people, right? You can talk to your best friend, maybe who has a child with type 1, in a way that's going to be different than you would talk to a coach or a teacher or even a grandparent, or like you said, the sleepover mom. You can edit and add whatever you want. I think there's this perception that we need to give the whole playbook, warts and all, to everybody. But at the same time, you're not sugarcoating it, but you don't need to go into every detail and everything to everybody. Like you said, with the food earlier, it's okay to tell a mom at a birthday party, yeah, he can have a piece of cake because you know what? It's a special occasion, or we eat like this. It's the 21st century. Our doctor is fine with it. Whatever you want to say. And then you can have a more in-depth conversation with your mom or, the grandparent where you'd say, look, we're going to be at your house for a week. I'd appreciate it if you could do X, Y, Z because we're trying to eat blah, blah, blah. If that's whatever your way of eating is. Ours is everything in moderation. So it's helpful to me, especially when Benny was really little. I would ask my mom, look, can you get desserts? I know it's a pain that are prepackaged. Can you buy ice cream sandwiches instead of a pint or whatever? And it just made it easier and nobody cared. But she didn't need to know the whole story behind it. But I did ask her that. I wouldn't ask that going to a birthday party. Because one day, who cares? So I think it's okay. And then it's okay to talk about this in different ways to different people is my point.
I think that's so smart. And I think that, we all want the whole world to understand everything and every implication of this, but that's just not a reality.
Yeah.
And so I think that measured information to different people makes perfect sense. And that way you're not going to freak anyone out. And this is the age of technology. When Lauren was little and I was dropping her off at things, there weren't even cell phones. I remember when I got my first pager. That's how old I am. There's always someone who's a quick phone call away now. So it's easy to leave it simple with someone and say, look, if you have any concerns or something freaks you out, just give me a quick call.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say, especially when Benny was younger, I will only feel comfortable. I will only sleep tonight if he was on a sleepover. If you promise me you will call me for the dumbest questions. And then they would say, sure. I said, and I mean anything like the food fell on the floor. I don't know if he ate all of it. The dog got a bite of the pizza or, how do we make sure that he gave himself the right amount or whatever it is. And they would say, sure, we'll call you. And they never really did. Once in a while you'd get the insect came out or something would happen and we always handled it. But I always slept better knowing I'm going to get that phone call if I need to.
Yeah.
All right. So next question. Jenny wrote, how do you handle when your child is feeling insecure or embarrassed? What do you do to build up their confidence about diabetes and let them know they aren't alone?
Oh, it's such a good question.
It is. Now, wait, before you jump in, I think, and you might be saying the same thing I am, we don't have shy children.
Right. And what I was going to say is there's such a different answer for every single child. Yeah. This is not. However, I would say a couple of things that I think were helpful. And I think this would have been a different experience if my other child had been diagnosed because she's sort of my quieter, more introverted one. And Lauren is like me, her life is an open book. However, a couple of things that I think really helped us. First of all, just letting them do everything in life again, of course, helps other kids sort of notice and not be freaked out about it. But more important, when Lauren was little, we started doing the Walk to Cure Diabetes. We chose JDRF, and that's another conversation. But what we did is we made it a fun party for all her friends. And in order to come to the walk, you had to do two things. One was you had to raise at least $10 because I wanted to make it doable for everyone. And the other was you had to learn with your family a little bit about what type 1 diabetes is. And we had this huge party at our house after the walk, and we got a limo company to donate a limo we would raffle off every year. One kid would ride in a limo to the ride and blah, blah, blah. So it became a positive. Everybody wanted to do the walk. We had 150, 200 walkers a year. All of Lauren's friends sort of looked at it in a positive way. And I think that really helped us. The other thing that I would say is diabetes camp, diabetes camp, diabetes camp. Yeah. And I will tell you, I was on the board of Lauren's camp for years. I saw kids dragged in screaming that they didn't want to go there, and the same kids dragged out screaming that they didn't want to leave. So if you think your 13-year-old or 12-year-old is rolling their eyes and saying there's no way, I might try to bribe them or force them into going, because oftentimes kids come home from camp with a newly gained confidence in who they are and how diabetes fits into their life.
Yeah. There is nothing like, I guess the formal name for it is peer support, right? I mean, that's the reason why I, years ago, sought you out more because, that's why I needed to read what you had to write. And that's why I needed to connect with local moms in my area, because there is nothing like the people who get it. And as much as we love our kids and want to help them, we don't live their life. We don't have their experience, and they need that. Even the shyest kid, I think, feels better when they at least meet someone else who is doing shots, wearing a pump, checking blood sugar, getting nagged by their parents about this, that, and the other thing with diabetes. And they may not be best friends after that, but the osmosis of just being around people who get it, who are their age, is invaluable. And, diabetes camp is exactly what I was going to say. Also just local programs. You may not have access to, diabetes camp until next summer. But, there are likely events throughout the year going on in your area. JDRF summits are a great way to not just learn as an adult or as a parent what's going on, but they often have programming for kids. And even if you have obnoxious teenagers, I mean, I've taken Benny to so many of these summits, and for the last couple of years, he hasn't gone into the programming. He's just sought out some kids his age, and then they I shouldn't say this probably, but they hang out outside and say, this programming is so dumb. And then they're like, what pump do you have? What do you do?
That's what teenagers do, though.
Right.
And I also want to add that parents should look at it outside of the realm of diabetes, too. And that being that your kids probably don't realize that many, many, many of the people around them have things they're struggling with, too, that may not be visible. And I remember when Lauren was little, a kind woman at our beach club had approached her after she was diagnosed to sort of share this with her. And Lauren was, 6, 7. And she came home and said, Mommy, Mrs. So-and-so has polar bear disease. She told me that. You can't see it, but she has it, and she has to take medicine for it, just like I have to for diabetes. And I'm like, polar bear disease, she's bipolar.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God.
But so many children have, like you said before, asthma or terrible food allergies or anxiety, and they're just working at fitting in with their lives too. And I think it's an important message for our children with diabetes to understand that while your situation is unique from others, others have unique situations too.
Yeah. I used to do a presentation every year. Gosh, I forgot all about this until you mentioned that. From when Benny was 2 until probably 4th grade. And that's when I became mortifying. But I used to go to school and do a presentation where I talked about, I would say, like, you don't have to raise your hand, but do you know anybody with asthma? Do you know anyone who wears glasses? Have you seen people in wheelchairs or maybe using oxygen? There are different parts of the body that, need extra help, like your eyes when you wear glasses, your lungs when you have asthma and you need an inhaler. Benny's pancreas needs extra help. And it really helped the kids understand it more. And I think it helps them all. I mean, the kids just have this natural empathy. Sometimes it's harder to teach the parents. But everybody But everybody's dealing with something, and it does help to put it in those terms. I also think that to answer Jenny's question again, there are just going to be kids who are not walk kids, who are not poster children, and don't really want to talk about it outside the family, and that's okay. I mean, Benny used to be that kid who was, I want to cut the ribbon. I'm going to be out there. And I think naturally as a 14-year-old, he's just like, yeah, whatever, Mom, I'll be there when I'm there. Or, he doesn't want to do it. And I can't push him because that's silly. So I go to events that I want to go to. Sometimes I don't even bring him anymore. And that's okay. He knows it's there for him. So if your kiddo isn't not like ours, at least at one point where they were just like, look at me, it doesn't mean that they can't have more confidence about having type 1.
No, it doesn't. But I would add an addendum to that in that those things are not necessary. But it is really important for a child to be willing to let the people who they're around on a regular basis know that they have type 1.
Oh, yeah.
Or, they don't have to get up and make a speech about it. They don't have to do, here's my pump 101. Like the way Lauren does it in work now, she's had a couple new jobs over the past 5 years. And it's like, how do I tell them when I start? And what she usually does is they're eating in a meeting or alarm goes off and she just pulls her pump out and says, hey, you guys, just so you know, I have type 1. It's no big deal. If you have any questions, let me know.
Oh.
It's really important for kids to grow up not keeping it a secret. And there are a lot of reasons for that. One is psychological and emotional, because it shouldn't be something they feel shame attached to. And the other is it's just good in general for the people you're around on a regular basis to know that you have type 1, just in case.
No, that's a great point. I love how casual she is about it. That's perfect. Just, hey, here it is. And if you have any questions, it makes everybody else comfortable too, because they're not wondering what's going on.
Yeah. And that comes from helping them as they grow up. So if you have a child who I don't want anyone to know about this, you need to delve deeper into that and help them figure it out and work with your CDE and your endo and your medical team to help them know how to communicate it without putting out banners.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. What I did for Benny in middle school, and I'm sure I'll continue all through high school, is right at the beginning of the school year, I send an email to all of his teachers. Just everybody CC'd, and hey, Benny has type 1. And a little bit about him and kind of what that means. He wears a pump. He beeps. He's got, blah, blah, blah. At our school, he's allowed to carry his cell phone. I know that changes school to school in different policies. But I do say, I do mention that. And I always say, if he's abusing that, he knows it's for medical purposes. It's not to, play Fortnite. So, you are allowed to take the phone away or tell me or whatever. But other than that, he I don't do the presentation anymore. Although I'd love to. That would be so funny with a bunch of 8th graders.
Well, that's what I said when Lauren went to college. I was like, I don't think I can go into the dorm and read Rufus Goes to School with Diabetes to all the children on the floor. So it was good at that point that she knew how to weave it into her life.
And, just to put a point on this question, if you do have a younger child, and, a lot of schools will have the reading nook, we always donated a book about diabetes. And it wasn't something that he sat and read in front of the class. But when I did that little presentation, I would say, and I'm going to put this in the reading library. And we would donate the Rufus book, or there's one called Jackie's Got Game that actually has the name Benny in it, which is amazing. Ooh. Oh, that was a miracle when we got to the page of that book. It was so exciting. It really was. So we would donate different books, and now they have the Lily diabetes books with the Coco character. And there are some books for tweens. I think Lily's books go all the way up to, I'd say probably 6th grade. I don't know if it's any older than that, but there's some sporty stuff and things. So you can put that in the classroom too. And I was surprised how many kids took those books home and read them with their parents.
It's a great idea. And I think the hardest age for all this would be a newly diagnosed teenager, because everything is awkward when you're a teenager. And then you add this to it and it's just like, ugh. And so what I suggest in my book is small steps. Have the closest friends over a week after you get home from the hospital and have a little pizza party. And then they can see, oh, you can still eat pizza, but you have to do this, and just kind of explain it to the best friends. And then your child has sort of a footing into people knowing. Don't send them to school and make them do an assembly for the whole school.
Oh my gosh.
Kind of baby step them up. And if they say I don't want to do it, just say, we're just going to do it with your closest friends who you trust. And then as far as the people who might treat them wrong or say something stupid, those people were probably going to treat them wrong or find something stupid to say about something else anyway. Mean people are mean people, diabetes involved or not.
And it's such a good point because, as we said, our kids were diagnosed so much younger. So when you're diagnosed as a teen, I know you talk to a lot of parents of teens, and I'll be honest with you, I don't feel like I have a handle of the teen years. I mean, we're just entering them. But if you're diagnosed in high school, after you talk to those best friends, I mean, how do you handle it with teachers and things like that? High schoolers are so independent. As you mentioned, though, for safety reasons, can parents maybe discreetly do the email? What do you recommend?
Honestly, a newly diagnosed child in high school, you need to go in and have a meeting with the teachers and the nurse. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be all over it all the time. It just means that everyone's going to understand what's going on. And then you kind of work it out with your child as they go along. And you just have to say to your child, I would include my child at a high school age in that meeting, by the way. And you just have to say to your child, I know this is painful right now, but it's never going to be the same, but you're going to have your new normal, and us taking these kind of steps is what's going to lead to it. You just tell your child, you don't want to have to explain every time you have to leave the classroom, or you have to pull out a piece of food in the classroom, or you're using your meter somewhere, or why you have to use your phone. Let's just do it all with the school, and then we'll move from there.
One thing that I have heard was helpful, and only because Benny was the little kid in this scenario is we had a couple of teenage friends who then became kind of babysitters for us. But they said it was kind of fun to hang out with Benny because, you have a 15 or 16-year-old who is being taught, in quotes, by a 4 or 5-year-old about diabetes. And, it's true. One of our close family friends, she always tells the story. She's like 27 or 28 now, but she was diagnosed at 20 and Benny was probably 4. And she said, I came over and she and her mom came to our house and, we were all crying and you know how these things go when you're newly diagnosed. And Benny took her hand and was like, come on, like, let's go away from the grown-ups and I'll show you how to do this. Like, let's check our blood sugar. And she said it changed everything for her because she thought, wow, if this little kid can do this, I should be able to as well. Or, helping him kind of helped her. So I don't know if it's helpful if you've got a teen who's maybe really not wanting to talk to other people with diabetes. Sometimes helping a little kid with diabetes might be helpful for them. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it might be helpful for them as far as their daily care, but I think the psychological ramifications are very different for a teenager than they are for a small child. And so as far as being comfortable with it, I think that a small child can help them be comfortable with, if he can do all that, I can do all that. But I'm not sure it translates outside of that. I just think the teen years are such tough years overall. I mean, people feel awkward about what brand is on their shoe, for goodness sake, which they shouldn't. And so then you add all this to it. So I think that's why kind of easing your friends into it and getting it. But bonus for newly diagnosed teenagers is you can make a boatload of money babysitting for younger kids with diabetes.
That's true. That is true. We should do another episode on that because we're going to run out of time here a little bit. But you don't need a super specially trained babysitter to watch your kid with type 1. But let's save
that as a question for another time. That's a really good question.
But I agree. But having type 1 as a teenager makes you a hot commodity in babysitting circles.
Oh yeah, Lauren made bank. And then the mothers would tell me that the kids would be like, you're doing it wrong. Lauren does it this way.
I love it. With me, they'd be like, he's doing it wrong. He doesn't clean anything. He doesn't, right?
Right.
Benny.
You're supposed to lick your finger.
He doesn't throw anything out. Oh, he's disgusting. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, thank you very much, Moira. I'm excited to continue with this. If you have questions for us, we will be posting on social media. Definitely follow Diabetes Connections on Facebook and follow us in the Facebook group. You can always join the Facebook group. It's the best way to get your questions answered. And we'll be linking up to all of Moira's stuff as well because she's such an eloquent writer and has so many great things to say. I think this is going to be fun. I might start calling you Dear Abby, my friend.
I know we got to think of something for both of us. And we should throw in something in the pot. How about before the next episode, we'll randomly draw from everyone who puts in a question and I will send a signed copy of my book to someone.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's great. You travel a lot and you have appearances. Where can we find you? Where are you going to be?
I am really excited that on January 19th in the morning, I am going to be speaking at SeaWorld in Orlando. So I'm really hoping that like dolphins jump up over me and stuff while I speak and do tricks over my head. Or maybe I could ride one of the dolphins with a handheld mic or something. But I'm going to be, it's actually the JDRF Orlando area walk kickoff. They are expecting more than 500 people, but everyone is invited. So if you're hearing this and you'd like to go, get in touch with the JDRF chapter in Orlando. Maybe Stacey can put it up on the site and come meet me. And if I'm there, if I'm somewhere speaking, come say hi to me because I'm a person and I'm a diabetes mom and I like to meet people and get support too.
That's we talk about things as you listen. We plan things out. We know I did not know she was going to be at SeaWorld. I would have had maybe I could put some orca sound effects or something in there. But that's great. I'll be very disappointed if you don't send me a picture of you with a dolphin.
Oh, it's done.
And I'll be in this coming weekend. I'll be in Charlotte for the JDRF Summit for the Greater Western Carolinas chapter. And that'll be fun. We've got all sorts of stuff going on this year, so we'll keep you posted where we will be. I want more. I think next step for us is we're gonna work on doing this live together somewhere. So we'll work on that.
Well, that's gonna be fun.
Just as an excuse to hang out with you.
All our fan will come. See, I didn't pluralize it.
You kill me. All right, my dear. Thank you so much. We will talk again soon.
We will. It's always so good to talk to another diabetes parent and diabetes friend. I'm 21 years into this and I still need this kind of support. So thank you. And this is going to be a fun adventure.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Keep an eye on the Facebook page and in the Facebook group, Diabetes Connections, the group. I will be asking for your questions for me and for Moira next month. As you heard, she's going to give away a book to one of the people that asks us a question. So that was very nice of her. And, we were mentioning, I'd love to do this live. I think that would be a lot of fun. If you do want us to come to your event, if you have something in mind, let me know and let me know soon. Moira travels quite a bit, not only for her travel journalism job, but she speaks about diabetes all the time. My schedule for 2019 is firming up very much as well. In fact, as you heard, we're already kicking it off. So let me know and we will take the show on the road. I think we need a name for that segment. We're kicking around a couple. Let me know your ideas for that as well. And of course, if you disagreed with some of the advice we gave or have something to say about it, you got to let me know. You can post in the group or always email me, Stacey@diabetes-connections.com. In our community connection this week, another diabetes mom who took her interest and expertise in the DIY community to now work with Tidepool to release Loop as an FDA-regulated mobile app. Katie DiSimone is one of those people who came out of nowhere in the diabetes community. Of course, it was not in the diabetes community until her daughter was diagnosed just a couple of years ago. But she jumped right in, became very well known in the DIY circles, and is now working with Tidepool to release Loop, as I mentioned. And Loop is basically an iOS app for the Apple phone, and only right now, and you use an older Medtronic pump, and there are several other steps. But basically, it is a hybrid closed loop. However, it's not regulated. It is a DIY, as I said. These pumps are out of warranty. And what Tidepool is trying to do, as we've mentioned before, is shepherd Loop through FDA approval so that it can be used within warranty pumps. I will let Katie explain more. I caught up with her at the D-Data conference out in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, and I just was fascinated by her story. She starts out by talking about the conference itself.
It's multifold. A conference like this brings together so many different ranges in the diabetes experience. I'm not just a mom of a kid with type 1. I'm also a tech user and have worked in the DIY looping community for the last few years. And this brings together people from CGMs, from endocrinology clinics, from pump companies and hackers and all sorts of audience that I feel like I get a real synergy for understanding the different aspects. And now working with Tidepool-Loop, that kind of synergy is really important, I think, to understanding where I can best leverage my time and efforts. So,
for people who don't know you, can you talk a little bit about Night Scout and your background? And
and how I got into DIY?
Yeah.
So the way I got involved was originally, ironically, when Anna was diagnosed, I stayed off the internet for the first few days, conscientiously made an effort to say, okay, let's let this be our experience and not what the internet tells me it needs to be. So I stayed off of it. And slowly, after about 2 weeks' time, which for me is slow as far as technology goes, about 2 weeks' time, I said, okay, I'm ready to look at what's out there for other people. And I saw a blood sugar on a watch, on a Pebble watch, and I said, holy smokes, I didn't know this was possible. So I went about researching what that was and found Night Scout and found CGM in the cloud and said, that's it, we're doing it.
And how old was Anna and what year?
She was diagnosed when she was 12, back in 2015. And so we saw that. We went to our endocrinologist and said, we need to get this Dexcom. And I said, and we saw this Pebble thing, and they said, oh, you kind of have to be really technical about it. And I said, I'm not intimidated. We'll do it. And we did that, and it totally changed our lives. Just made, my teen be able to be a teen. I had information which, when provided to me, allowed me to not ask her intrusive questions throughout her day about her diabetes. And that was great. And from there, I have one of the oddest kids, I think, around, because when she started high school, the summer before she started, she told me, Mom, I want to switch from a pod to a tube pump. I want my diabetes to be more visible when I go to high school. And I said, okay, that's odd, but all right, we'll indulge. And in order to do that, I had to buy a used pump because we were still under contract. And when I knew we were going to do that, I said, this is my opportunity to get on a closed loop system for her. And that's how we found Loop. At the time, it was summer of 2016. There weren't a lot of users out there, and that was how I got involved, was during that time.
Before you go any further, forgive me. When your doctor said, well, you have to be kind of technical, I've always assumed you are super technical. Are you not? Is that not your background?
No, I am, but not by training traditionally. I have dabbled in technology for a long time, and I'm an engineer, but a civil and environmental engineer by training. But I ran my own wedding photography business for 12 years, and that required me to develop my own website and maintain all sorts of online presence. And so in order to do that, I figured out some bits of code, and I figured out HTML, and I learned those kind of parts. And then I'm a tinkerer, and so I'm not afraid to fail. And so that was how a lot of my knowledge and use has come in the diabetes world.
What was your daughter's reaction when you said, okay, if you want a tube pump, great, but we're going to kind of build this thing?
She said, sure, whatever, you're a geek. But she said, basically, it has to be small and easy and not make life worse. And so that was actually what we started with at the time. I only knew of was OpenAPS. So my very first part was, well, I'm not going to make it past that hurdle that she has, which because the fanny pack was not in vogue at the high school, so that wasn't going to work out for us. So instead, I was Googling OpenAPS small, OpenAPS portable, small miniature OpenAPS, and I found on Instagram a picture of a kid at school holding up his phone, and the caption from the dad said, "First day at school with Loop." And I went, I've never seen that before. What is that? And Googled it, found the group, and said, that is a closed loop, small pocket. My kid can take this and work this. And it's on an iPhone, which if you have a teen and an iPhone are almost inseparable. So I knew the gear would stay with her, and I knew she'd have it with her all the time. So it was fantastic for us.
What do you like about Loop? Tell us some of the features that really make a difference.
Oh, right away, the very first thing, even if you just left it on open loop, the best part for us immediately was that I didn't have to ask her if she had eaten, if she had bolused, I didn't have to, because it all comes through the system and goes into Night Scout. And so it eliminated me having to text her in the middle of school and ask, like, okay, your blood sugar's going up really fast, because she gets a lot of blood sugar spikes from nerves from tests or a cute boy that she's talking to or whatever the case is.
That's amazing, isn't it?
So now I don't have to interfere and say, hey, give yourself a bolus to cover the anxiety or the nerves, because the food she got covered, no problem. I don't interfere. But this gave me information to stay out of her life more often. Then you add the closed loop part where now it's not just that I have the information. Something else is doing the actions for us. And it brought us back to what normal mom-teen-daughter interactions were. It could be about, did you do your chores? Have you done your homework? Rather than trying to layer in the I'm already tired of talking to you because we talked about diabetes. So it just brought us back to a more normal life.
And then how did you wind up with Tidepool?
So Tidepool, I ended up there and with this incredible group because I think they're visionary, and I'm really excited about how they're challenging the status quo of interpretations of regulatory. I come from a regulatory background. That's what I did in my job prior to joining Tidepool. And so to hear Howard, the CEO of Tidepool, talk about challenging the norms and the expectations, that when you walk into a room, don't presuppose that the answer is going to be no. That's exactly the correct attitude that we need to have in dealing with moving these things forward. And then also, Tidepool is offering this structure and this group of people that have been in the diabetes. They live it, they experience it, they're nonprofit. That's what our DIY community, if we're going to see, talking as DIY Katie, if I'm going to see Loop, my beloved DIY project, go into the hands of a more commercialized, formal sort of arena, I'd want it to be with a nonprofit who understands the patient perspective, who understands what's important to the DIY community, and Tidepool knows that. They live it. They are Loop users. They get it. And it's the right fit for Loop to go forward in that path. And I'm just really excited by how well they know all the devices. Tidepool's worked across a great swath of all the devices on the market, all the meters and the pumps and the CGMs. And so it's a really good fit to bring this forward and actually have it be a success rather than, we met our first stumbling block, we give up. No, they're not like that.
See, when I look at the We Are Not Waiting in the Night Scout community, it's very interesting for me because, and I've shared this before, I am in awe of you all, of anyone who uses it, of all the people who developed it, because I think that in addition to helping yourselves, you're pushing industry forward. I don't use Night Scout. I never have. I don't use Loop. My son, he might. He hasn't wanted to do any DIY stuff before. But when I look at Loop and I think about a company like Tidepool now, working with the different device makers, it's going to bring it to many, many more people, like myself. It's hard to picture, though, that We Are Not Waiting community and that kind of that little Night Scout family becoming so big.
Yeah.
Part of it's thrilling, part of it's scary. What if it changes? What if Loop gets weird?
It is. It's really hard. When I first heard this idea of, okay, we've got this synergy going. We think that we can take Loop, DIY Loop, morph it a little bit into Tidepool-Loop and get it through this process. I said, but if you do that, and oh, wow, you could form partnerships and it's going to change everything. And then I go, oh no, it's going to change everything. And the little voice in the back of your head that goes, but will I still have? And my analogy is, I think about a month after we got on Loop, Nate, the developer of Loop, left to go work for Apple. And he posted a blog post that said, I'm handing the reins off to a very capable set of people who can maintain this and do this. And I bawled. I cried. I thought, I'm so scared. No, we just found this amazing thing and I didn't trust and I was worried about what would happen of it. And all of my fears, luckily, have been unfounded. It has continued to maintain. Tidepool has generously said, we don't expect you to stop your DIY Loop support. You can keep doing that. You might have to talk as DIY Katie sometime and make that clear, and Tidepool Katie, but we don't see that this has to stop the DIY support or the DIY community, which is just amazing. I don't think you'd get that from many people. They sign the employee, they put them under an NDA and say, that's it, you can't do it. Not the case for Tidepool. They still recognize the community support and the DIY that has brought this forward.
How's your daughter doing?
She is doing great, thanks. She is loving it. She thinks I'm still a bit of a tech geek and kind of wonders why. I said, Mom's going to be working on Loop now. She, like you weren't before. So it's nice to see her kind of excited about it. I have seen her share with friends, so I know secretly she's actually kind of proud, and it's nice. I'm just really excited for how wide this can help our community. To have in-warranty, loopable pumps available that if your kid does the inevitable and jumps into a jacuzzi or drops a pump and it breaks, that this is going to still be a viable solution going forward with in-warranty pumps is huge.
I would tell you, I would never have put my son on an out-of-warranty pump. It just made me too nervous, even though I know that there were people listening and rolling their eyes at me. But it wasn't something that's in my comfort zone. Yeah. This is going to change that. I don't know if I'll do it, but I love that the option is going to be there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Is not everybody has the same comfort level, and analogous to food choices with diabetes. There's a lot of people who will tell you have to eat a certain way or feel a certain way about your food choices. It's the same thing with the pumps and the DIY looping. Not everybody's going to feel comfortable with an out-of-warranty pump, and an endocrinologist for sure isn't going to feel, all of them won't feel comfortable. Some will, some are supportive, some aren't. But to be able to have an atmosphere where you can walk into your endocrinologist's office and talk to them about this system with an in-warranty pump, with the proper training and support, it's going to at least give people options, which is what I think the diabetes community is owed and deserves. So,
fantastic. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
More information about Loop, about Katie, about Tidepool over at diabetes-connections.com. As you know, if you're a longtime listener, I am absolutely fascinated by people who jump into the DIY scene, and I'm so excited to see where they bring our community. They just keep pushing. I'm very thankful for that. Time for our Tell Me Something Good segment, and we are going to kindergarten this week. But first, Tell Me Something Good is brought to you by Real Good Foods. I cook dinner just about every weeknight. 4 nights. But sometimes you do need something just convenient. It's just one reason why I love Real Good Foods. It's not only that their food is delicious, low carb, and grain-free. It's that you don't have to order it by mail. The cauliflower crust pizzas, the poppers are in your grocery store or your Walmart freezer. You can certainly order online. It's a great way to get mixed packs to try everything. But it is hard to find lower carb, good tasting stuff convenient in the grocery store. Real Good Foods makes it easy. Find out more. Just go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Real Good Foods logo. I created this segment because, there's a lot of not great stuff about diabetes. And I really want to just spend at least a minute every week talking about something good. And sometimes the stories are going to be longer. Sometimes maybe there'll be medical breakthroughs. And sometimes, like this week, it's going to be as simple as this. Laura posted on Facebook. Today I did lunch testing and dosing for my kindergartner T1D. They were eating in the classroom, so we just tested at his desk. Normally the nurse tests him in her room right off the cafeteria. He couldn't have cared less if anybody saw. The kids looked on as if it were as normal as someone unwrapping a sandwich in preparation for eating. It was wonderful to see that level of acceptance. Laura, thank you for sending in that story. A really simple one. A really great one. And you know what? I've always said the kids are a lot easier than the grown-ups sometimes, at least in our experience. They treat it as casually and as normally as we expect them to. So I'm glad for you, Laura. Send me another note. Let me know the name of your kiddo, and we'll give him another shout out. I want to do this every week, so I need your help. I'll be posting in the Facebook group and asking you online to share your stories, your good news stories, big, little accomplishments, kids, adults, whatever you've got. You can email me, Stacey at diabetes-connections.com, or post on social media. Tell me something good. All right, we are about ready to wrap it up for this week. Thanks, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. As I mentioned, I'm going to be at JDRF, Greater Western Carolinas Summit, right here in Charlotte. I'll definitely report back and let you know how that went. And lots more to come in the weeks ahead. We've got some great shows, some appearances coming up. Keeping busy. Thank you, as always, for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.